The station smelled like rust and old. Fear, D&ER noticed at the moment the airlock cycled open, not the rust that was normal for a way station this far out where maintenance crews stopped. Coming years ago, it was the fear, that particular stillness that settles into a place when something has gone wrong and the people who could fix it have already left. He pulled his kit bag off the cargo hook and stepped inside. His boots clicked against the metal floor. The lights were on emergency orange, which meant the main power was either failing or someone had switched it manually. He had done this run 6 times before. Outpost Davo was supposed to be a simple drop, leave the supply crates at Bay 4. Sign the automated log, leave 2 hours. Maybe less. The supply crates were still in his ship. He had not unloaded them. Yet something felt wrong. D&E was not a soldier. He had no military training and carried no combat gear. What he did carry was a tool belt, a handheld scanner, a short cargo hook, and 31 years of knowing when to be careful. Before freight work, he had spent 8 years as a wildlife ranger in the hill country of northern Canada, managing territories where the animals were large and had no interest in human schedules. That job had taught him one thing above everything else: when a place goes quiet, you slow down, you do not rush. You read the quiet first. He read it. Now, the main corridor leading from the docking bay split into 3 directions. Left went to the crew quarters, right went to the utility and power rooms. Straight ahead led to the central hub, and from there to the cargo bays that he went straight. The central hub was a wide circular room with 6 branching corridors and a low ceiling. Crates were stacked along the walls, some split open, their contents scattered. A food packet lay crushed near the far wall. Child-sized chute belonging to no human child, too narrow and long with 4 toe slots, sat alone in the middle of the floor. D&E picked it up, still warm. That he heard breathing. Tea was coming from cargo bay 3. Not one person, many small, rapid breaths stacked on top of each other, the way frightened animals breathe when they are packed together. And try not to make sound. He walked to the bay door and pressed his hand flat against it. On the other side, the breathing stopped all at once. I am not breath, he said in trade speech. His accent was rough, but the words were clear. I am human. I am alone. I will not open this door unless you tell me to. Silence. Then a voice, thin and careful, came through the door panel. How many humans? 1, D&E said at a long pause. 1 is not enough, the voice said. Enough for what? D&E asked. The door unlocked from the inside. She was small even by Fian standards, barely chest height on D&E, with pale blue-gray feathers flattened tight against her arms and a face that was all sharp angles and wide dark eyes. She looked at him the way a bird looks at something it has not decided about. Yet behind her, pressed into the back of the bay in a mass of feathers and quiet terror, were roughly 30 more Fane. Old ones, young ones, a few who looked injured. My name is Selah, she said. We were told this station was safe. What happened? D&E asked. Breath hunters came 6 hours ago. They put us in here and locked the door. She paused. They said they were coming back with the rest of their pack. D&E looked at the group behind her. Children, elders, no weapons, no way to fight. He looked back at Selah. How many in the pack? 8. She said. Total. He nodded slowly. Everyone else on the station gone. They all left. Her voice was flat when she said it, but her feathers pressed Tighter we could not fly the ships, D&E. Set his kit bag down, he unclipped his scanner and checked the docking registry. On its small screen, one breath vessel. Docked at Bay 7 still there. He looked at the ceiling, the lights, the vents. He thought for a moment the way he used to think when a predator was between him and the path he needed to walk, not about fighting, about space, about how to stand in it, stay in this bay. He said to Sela, keep the door locked from your side, do not open it for anyone except me. Sela stared at him. What are you going to do? I'm going to the central hub, he said. There are 8 of them, she said. You are one human with a tool belt. I know, he said. She made a sound that had no translation. In trade speech, it was somewhere between disbelief and pity, but she stepped back. The door closed. He heard the lock engage. D&E picked up his kit bag and walked back to the central hub. He found the lighting control panel on the east wall and brought the main lights down to 30%, low but not dark. He checked the ventilation direction and confirmed the airflow ran from the docking corridors inward toward the hub. Good. He moved 3 empty crates to clear the center of the floor. Then he sat down in the middle of the room, put his hands on his knees and waited. From somewhere deep in the station, a docking clamp engaged with a heavy metallic clunk. The breath ship had returned. The sound of breath moving through a metal corridor was not like anything else that I was not loud. That was the first thing people always got wrong. They expected something that size to crash in thunder, but breath moved away. All apex hunters moved carefully, precisely, with each step placed to make as little noise as possible. What D&E heard instead was a low rhythmic clicking. 8 legs finding purchase on the floor, one after another in a pattern that had no wasted motion, the sound of something that had never needed to hurry because nothing had ever made it run. He stayed seated, both hands resting open on his knees. The clicking got closer. D&E had worked a territory once in northern Canada where a male grizzly had claimed the eastern ridge, over 400 kg. Completely unafraid of humans, the ranger before D&E had tried to manage the bear through noise and presence. Shouting, flares, crowd tactics, the bear had stopped responding to all of it. Within 2 weeks, when D&E took over, he did something different. He walked into the bear's territory alone, and he sat down, not close, not trying to approach, just near enough to exist in the same space. He did not move. He did not make noise. He breathed slowly and let his body say the one thing that confuses a predator more than anything else. I am here, and I am not afraid, and I am not prey. The grizzly had circled him for 40 minutes, then it had walked away. D&E thought about that now. The first breath came through the north corridor opening. Even crouched low, it nearly filled the height of the entrance. 8 limbs for that functioned as legs for upper limbs that ended in wide-jointed graspers. Its head was broad and flat with forward-facing eyes and a jaw that opened in 3 sections. The scales along its back were dark brown with deep green banding. It stopped at the corridor opening and looked at D&E. D&E looked back. The breath made a sharp sound, a short percussive click from somewhere in its throat. 3 more came through behind it, then 2 more for the east corridor, then the last 2 from the south. 8, all of them spreading around the edges of the hub in that slow surrounding movement that predators use when they're not in a hurry because they believe nothing can leave. The largest One stopped in the center of the north. Opening, this one was different from the others, older, the banding on its scales had faded to a dull pattern, and one of its upper grasping limbs had an old scar running the length of it. It moved with the kind of quiet authority that does not need to announce itself. It looked at D&E the way a thing looks at something it is trying to categorize. This was Gath. D&E had not known its name then. He learned it later, but even in that first moment, he recognized what it was, the one that the others watched before they moved, the decision maker. Gath looked at the seated human for a long moment. The hub was nearly silent. The low orange light made the shadows long. The ventilation carried D&E's sent outward into the corridors, not away from the breath but toward them. Another thing the old ranger had taught him: let them smell you. Hiding your scent is what prey does. Point one. The younger breath on the west side made a quick forward movement, just a step. Testing. D&E turned his head and looked directly at it. The young breath stopped. Gath made a low sound, not the sharp clicking of communication, but something deeper from further down in its chest. The others went still. It was watching D&E with an expression that had no direct reading in human terms, but which D&E recognized from a different context entirely. It was the look of an animal encountering something that does not fit its existing understanding, not confusion exactly, more like a recalculation happening in real time. Sela was watching through the narrow gap of Cargo Bay 3's door. She had cracked it 1 cm. She could not help herself. She watched the human sitting in the middle of 8 predators and could not find a word for what she was seeing. In Fane culture, the correct response to a breath was to be somewhere. The breath was not. Everything else was considered a mistake. The human did not appear to have read that. Gath took 3 slow steps into the hub. Its footfalls were nearly silent. It lowered its broad head and breathed in D&E's direction, a long, deliberate inhale, reading the chemical information in the air. D&E kept his breathing steady, in through the nose, out slow. He kept his eyes on Gath without staring hard. Soft focus, direct but not a challenge, present but not aggressive. Gareth's jaw sections shifted. It charged, not a full charge, a burst, the kind used to cause panic. To see how the target broke, it closed half the distance in under a second, a wall of scale and limb and mass, and stopped 2 body length from D&E with a sound like a pressure seal releasing. D&E had not moved, not a flinch, not leaned back. His hand was still open on his knees. Gath stood over him close enough that D&E could feel the heat coming off its body and stared down. The hub was completely silent. Then slowly Gath pulled back its grasping limbs, not retreating but something else, something closer to stillness. Point one. Of the younger breath on the far side of the hub made a low and uncertain sound. There's a moment in every confrontation with a large predator where the situation could go either way. D&E knew it well. He had lived inside that moment more times than he could count. In forests and mountain passes and riverbanks where the animal across from him was bigger, faster, and built for violence in ways that no human body could match. The moment balanced on a single question: does the thing across from you believe at its deepest level that you belong in the category of food? If it did, nothing else mattered. Size, calm eye contact, none of it would save you. If it did not, if something in Your presence had already moved you out of that category before the decision was made. Then the ancient math changed. Predators do not spend energy on things that are not food or threat. A thing that is neither becomes something else entirely, something to be assessed, possibly avoided. DNE had spent 2 minutes sitting in that balance with Gath. Thought he was still there. Gath stood close enough that when it breath, DNE could see the fine vibration of its scales along its neck. Its 3-section jaw was slightly open. The forward-facing eyes had not moved off DNE since the false charge. The other 7 breath had not moved either. They were watching Gath. Whatever Gath decided next, they would follow, slowly. DNE rose to his feet, not quickly, not with any snap of movement. He unfolded from the floor, the way a person rises who is not trying to do anything in particular, the way you stand up from a chair at the end of a long day, tired and unhurried. He came to his full height, which was not especially impressive compared to Gath, and he stood still. Gath did not move back. DNE took 1 step to the side, not away. Sideways. He moved around Gath the way you move around a parked vehicle in a narrow corridor, not giving way, not challenging, simply navigating the space. As he passed, he let his right hand brush lightly against Gath's flank. 1 brief, deliberate touch, palm flat. Calm pressure. Gath spun. The speed of it was extraordinary. 8 limbs reorienting in an instant, the whole mass of the creature turning faster than something that size should have been able to move. Its grasping limbs spread wide, the jaw opened fully. DNE was already standing still again. He had not run. He had turned to face Gath when it turned, so they were looking at each other again. But now DNE was between Gath and the corridor that led to cargo Bay 3. He had not done that by accident. Gath stared at the place where DNE's hand had touched it, then it stared at DNE. The clicking sound it made was different this time, faster, with a rising pitch, not the usual predator communication, something closer to what Sela, watching through the cracked door, would later describe to the council as the sound of wrath makes when something does not make sense. And oh, Prey had ever touched a breath during a charge. And experience. Prey ran, Prey screamed. Prey curled into itself or threw useless objects or did the 1,000 frantic things that Prey did when it understood it was about to die. Prey did not walk in a calm arc around an apex hunter and briefly rest a hand against its side, like a person confirming that a piece of furniture is exactly where they thought it was. Garatha's pack was still all 7 of them. Even the young one that had stepped forward earlier was fully motionless now. Iro, the youngest of them, the one with the brightest banding, still sharp on its scales, made a sound that none of the others made. It was quiet, short. It had no aggressive content. Sela, with her broader knowledge of breath, vocal patterns from a lifetime of avoiding them, recognized it later as the sound, meaning something close to wait. Gareth's open jaw slowly closed. That I looked at DNE with the full weight of attention and did not move. DNE breathed out slowly. He stood between Gath and the cargo bay corridor, with his hands at his sides and his face entirely neutral, not defiant, not pleading, neutral in the specific way that communicates nothing except presence. He was not trying to win a staring contest. He was not posturing. He was simply occupying a point in space and making it clear without a single Word that he intended to remain there. The hub was so quiet that Sela could hear the ventilation, then Gath did. Something unexpected, it Saturday not. All the way down, breath did not sit the way smaller creatures did, but it shifted its weight back onto its rear limbs and brought its upper body lower. In the resting posture breath used when they were not in active pursuit. Grasping limbs folded in, the jaw stayed closed. Point two of the others followed. Then two more. Euro was already sitting. Only three remained standing, and even. It shifted away from the aggressive spread that meant imminent attack. Sela pressed her face closer to the gap in the door. She was trying to understand what she was looking at. The human had not used a weapon, had not yelled or threatened, had not offered anything. He had simply moved through the space like he had permission to be there, and somehow, 8 breath hunters had begun to act like they believed him. Gath opened its jaw again, but this time the sound that came out was slower, more structured. It was asking a question. Sela understood the words. She translated them to herself in a whisper, still staring through the crack. What are you? Dane did not speak breath. Very few people did. It was not a language that was designed for learning. It was built for a creature with 3 jaw section, a secondary resonance chamber behind the nasal ridge, and a vocal range that dropped below what most species could hear. The trade speech approximation of it was rough and limited, but Gath's question had been simple enough in structure that Sela had understood it, and Dne had seen her face appear the cargo bay gap. He turned his head slightly toward the door. I need you out here, he said in trade speech. Long pause, then the door opened and Sela stepped out. Every breath in the room moved at once, not charges, not attacks, but the full alert that prey triggers when it enters a predator's space. Grasping limbs opened, the ones that have been sitting rose. Gath's head came forward. Dne stepped between them and Sela without haste. He did not raise his hands, he did not shout, he simply stepped calmly and deliberately into the line between the predators and the Fang. And he stayed there the same as before. The same neutral, present occupation of space. Gath stopped. It looked at the human standing between itself and what should have been easy prey, and something in its posture shifted in a way that Sela, pressed close behind Dne, could not name but could feel. It was not defeat, it was not submission, it was something harder to describe, the quality of a very large and dangerous thing that has decided for reasons it is still examining to wait. It asked me what I am. Dne said quietly to Sela. Tell it this. He spoke in simple trade speech, pausing after each sentence to let her translate. I am human. I come from a small planet called Earth. It is not a large planet. It is not a powerful one by any measure the galaxy uses, but is old, and for most of its history the creatures that lived on it were much larger than us and much stronger than us and much faster than us. Sela translated. Gath listened. Its eyes stayed on Dne. We did not have armor. We did not have natural weapons. We had no claws worth mentioning, and our teeth are a poor argument for survival. For a very long time we were prey. Something else ate us. We were at the bottom of the order, and we knew it. Gath's jaw shifted, a low sound interest, or it was something close to it, but we did not stay there. We learned something. We learned that there is a space in the middle of a predator's territory that is not defined by strength. it is defined by something else, by the absence of fear, by the presence that does not flinch. We learned over thousands and thousands of years by living near creatures that could kill us and did not, that if you move through the world like prey, you'll be treated like prey. And if you do not, you will not. Sela translated. Her voice was steady, though her feathers were not. We learned to stand near the animals that hunted us, not to fight them, not to dominate them, just to stand near them and breathe slowly and take up space like we belong there. And after long enough, they stop testing us, not all of them, not every time, but enough that we survived, enough that eventually we learned to live beside creatures that should have eaten us long before we had the chance to grow into what we are. Gath had not moved, neither had most of the pack. Euro had settled fully onto its rear limbs and was watching with a specific focused stillness that Silen noticed with a quiet shock. Looked almost like respect. There is a law older than strength, DNE said. It does not have a name in any language I know, but it says this: if you do not behave like prey, you are not in the food chain, and if you are not in the food chain, a predator has no instruction for what to do with you. Gath was quiet for a long time after Sela finished the translation. Then it made a sound, low, long, descending in pitch. Sela had heard that sound once before from a breath that her grandmother's village had encountered. She had asked an elder what it meant. The elder had said it was the sound that meant that is a thing I will consider. Gath looked from DNE to the cargo bay door, then back to DNE. It made another sound, shorter, with a different structure. Sela translated automatically without thinking. Her voice came out small. It says the Fane in the bay were caught under legal claim, under breath territory law. They belong to the pack. DNE looked at Gath. What does it take to break that claim? Sela asked. Gath answered. Sela translated a stronger claim, Dunadi. He looked at Gath and spoke without asking Sela first in the flattest, simplest trade speech he could produce. They are under my claim. The hub was completely silent. Then from somewhere deep in the station, far away through two sets of bulkhead walls and a long corridor, a second docking clamp engaged. Gath heard it, every breath in the room heard it. The reaction was immediate and unified. Alert postures, grasping limbs open, heads turned toward the sound. Gath turned back to DNE. Sound it made had no warmth in it. Sela translated. That is a second pack. They do not follow our codes. I cannot stop them. The second pack moved faster than the first. DNE could hear it, not the careful, deliberate movement of Gath's hunters, but something quicker and less patient. 6 sets of limbs on metal flooring coming from the direction of docking bay 7, where the second ship had just sealed its clamps. No pauses to assess, no careful placement of feet. They had been here before, somewhere like it, and they already knew what they were coming for. DNE looked at Gath. Gath looked at DNE, then at the corridor behind him, then back. It said something short. Sela translated from behind DNE's shoulder. They're not its problem. He had expected that breath pack law was specific. Garatha's pack had no obligation to act against another pack for the sake of a human's claim or fame. Lives, it would have been asking them to take on cost and risk for creatures they had no bond with. That was not how Apex social structures worked. He knew that. To get back in bay, he said to Sela, lock it, don't open it. You cannot do This again, she said. Her voice was not unkind. It was the voice of someone who has done math and does not like the answer. The first time worked because they did not expect you. This second pack, they will not pause the way Gath did. They do not use pack codes. They do not have the same bay. D&E said. Now she went. The door closed. The lock engaged. At Gath's pack had moved to the sides of the hub, not leaving, not interfering. Watching in the flat, impatient way of predators who have no stake in what is about to happen but find it worth observing. Euro had not moved from its spot at all. Its eyes were on D&E. D&E walked to the docking bay corridor and stood in the mouth of it. The second pack came around the far band. Their leader was immediately obvious. A breath, female, longer in body than Gath, with scars across both front, grasping limbs, and a pattern of dark scarring along the neck that spoke of a life spent making contact with things that fought back. Her scales had a reddish tone along the dorsal ridge. She moved at the front of her 6 hunters with the loose, rolling confidence of something that has never once been made to stop before it chose to. This was Vasha. He did not know her name yet either, but he knew the type. She saw the human standing alone in the corridor entrance, and she slowed, not because she was uncertain, but because she was interested. Her head came forward. The 3 jaw sections spread slightly. She looked at D&E the way person looks at an unexpected obstacle. They about to move. Behind her, her 6 hunters spread across the corridor with D&E stood still. There was no low lighting here, no prepared space, no carefully arranged ventilation, just a full-lit metal corridor and a human standing in it with his hands at his sides and nowhere particular to be. Vasha came forward another 3 steps and stopped 6 body lengths from him. She breathed in. Her eyes moved over him head to feet, the way predators perform visual assessment, reading size and weight and posture for information about what they're dealing with. D&E looked at her, not hard, not challenging, the same soft, direct eye contact that said, I see you and I am not afraid of what I see. Vasha's jaw closed. She cocked her head. She made a sound, quick, dismissive. She stepped forward. D&E said one word in trade speech, flat and clear. No. Vasha stopped. Her hunters stopped behind her. The word itself meant nothing to a breath. Trade speech was not their language, but the word was not the point. The point was the tone and the stillness behind it, the specific quality of a creature that is not asking, not begging, not warning out of fear, the quality of something that simply states a fact about the way things are going to be. Vasha stared at him. A long moment passed. Her tail moved slowly. Her grasping limbs opened wider. Then from the hub behind D&E, there was a sound, a single footfall. Heavy, deliberate. D&E did not look back, but Vasha did. Yo had walked to the corridor entrance and stopped beside D&E, not touching him, not posturing, just their present occupying the same space. Vasha looked at the young VH standing next to the human, and the expression that crossed her face, in whatever way Vrath face carries expression, was not what D&E would have called surprise, but it was close to it. Another footfall. Heavier. Gath stepped up on D&E's other side, and words, no display. The old scarred hunter simply stood in the corridor entrance next to the human and looked at Vasha with a flat patience of something that has made a decision. It does not feel the need to explain. Vasha looked at her 6 hunters. She looked at Gath, she looked at the human who had said one word and not moved. Her tail went still. The second stretched then. Without a sound, Vasha took one step back, then another. Her hunters shifted. With her, the deliberate, seamless retreat of predators who have calculated cost and decided the number is wrong. They did not run, Breath did not run, but they turned and they walked back the way they came. D&E listened to the footsteps fade, he listened to the distant seal of an airlock, he listened to the low vibration of a ship detaching from the clamp, then he breathed out. Gath said something at his shoulder. D&E looked at Sela's door. I need you out here, he called. The lock clicked, the door opened. Gath said, you held a claim against an uncoded pack. Sela translated it. D&E nodded. Gath was quiet for a moment, then it said something longer. Sela listened. Her feathers rose slightly the way they did. D&E had noticed when she heard something that surprised her. It says, Silik said carefully, that in Breath, law holding a claim under pressure from second pack makes the claim bonded. It cannot be transferred or broken by any other. Breath, not by law, not by force. She paused. It says the Fane and the Bay are yours until you release the claim yourself. D&E looked at Gath. Tell it I release the claim now. They are free people, they belong to themselves. Sela translated. Gath made a sound that Sela could not fully render in trade speech, but that she recognized from her grandmother's stories. The breath sound made when a thing is recorded, not written down, recorded in the way apex social creatures record things that matter by witness, by presence, by the collective memory of a pack that was there. It had been witnessed. Gath held D&E's gaze for one more moment, then it lowered its head just slightly, just once, and turned away. The pack followed. They moved back through the north corridor in their precise, unhurried way, and the clicking of their feet faded until there was nothing left. Iro went last. At the corridor entrance, it stopped and looked back at D&E. The sound it made was very quiet. Sela did not translate it. D&E did not ask her to. Some things did not need a translation. Then it was gone. The evacuation took 3 hours. D&E's freight ship had enough space for the 31 Fane if they packed the cargo hold and used the emergency seating. It was not comfortable. Nobody complained. One of the elder Fane, a narrow-faced male with white feathers around his eyes, gripped D&E's arm when he helped them board and would not let go for a long moment. He spoke in Fane, which D&E did not know. Sela translated. He says, you stood in front of an old darkness and it moved. He says that is not a small thing. D&E got them to the nearest inhabited station in 11 hours, handed them to a refugee coordination office, signed a transit report, drank a very bad cup of something hot from a vending unit in the waiting area. Then he filed a supply run report, noted out Posta as structurally compromised with a recommendation for formal inspection, and went back to work. He did not mention the breath. He did not know that Sela mentioned them. Instead, 3 weeks later, she stood in a minor council chamber on a mid-tier station in the Reach. It was a small hearing, 4 council members, 2 observers, 1 transcriptionist. The purpose was to formally record the DRA incident for the safety registry, since a station that had seen breath activity needed flagging. The council member running the hearing was a Sari, thin, pale, methodical. She had reviewed Sela's preliminary report and had one Question she kept returning to. The human used no weapons, she said. No defensive technology, no shield systems. No combat aids of any kind, correct. Scylla said in the first pack, 8. Breath did not attack, correct. In the second pack, 6 breath uncoded. Retreated, yes. Thay looked at her. Notes, what did the human use? Scylla thought about how to answer that. She had been thinking about it for 3 weeks during the quiet moments of the journey and the long hours at the coordination office and the slow process of helping the other Fane find shelter. She had not found a perfect answer, but she had found an honest one. He used himself, she said. He stood in the space where prey is not supposed to stand, and he did not move, and something in breath, something old, something underneath the hunting behavior did not know what to do with that, because prey moves, prey flinches, prey tells the predator what it is by what it does. He did not tell them anything except that he was there and that he intended to stay. The Sarani wrote something. Is there a category for this? I don't think so, Scylla said. The transcriptionist created one that day under a new file number in the behavioral incident registry. The formal label was long and bureaucratic, but the short note that Sarani added at the bottom of the incident summary was the one that got copied, forwarded, and eventually posted on 6 different network boards without anyone knowing exactly where it had come from. It said human subject held ground between 8 breath hunters and 31 refugees using no weapons and no technology. 2 separate packs yielded. Mechanism unknown. Classification pending. Catch testimony. DNE was at a freight dock on a completely different station when any of that happened. He was crouched near the base of a loading crane where a small 4-legged dock animal had been living under the machinery, matted in thin teeth, showing every worker on the shift had told him to leave it alone, that he sat near it. He waited. He breathed slowly. After 20 minutes, it stopped showing its teeth. After 30, it put its head down and closed its eyes. DNE sat a little longer. No reason to rush. Sometimes a frightened creature just needs someone to stay long enough to prove they mean no harm. 3 star systems away, a Sarani was writing the first official record of something humans had known for a very long time. There are laws older than strength. They do not have a name, but predators remember them if you remind them correctly.